Okay, let's get this party started. What do you need to know? This particular video is about Trump receiving news from the president of the Social Security Administration, known as Frank Bisignano. He's the commissioner, also the CEO of the IRS, of some potentially bad news. And I want to go through this real quick. Now, I just want to let you know that I don't think it's uncommon news. I think this is something that tends to happen in the Wall Street big money crowd. I don't think it's absolutely ridiculously shocking, but some people are acting like it is absolutely ridiculously shocking. So I thought I'd cover it real quick. Here is an article from Eric Wagner. Basically, title of the article is Bisignano draws scrutiny as his former company falters. Just months after the Social Security Commissioner and Internal Revenue Service CEO divested nearly $600 million in Fiserv investments, the business stock value tanked more than 40% on the news that Bisignano had issued overly rosy earnings guidance. So just to be clear, Frank Bisignano, before joining the Social Security Administration, had to divest himself of essentially that stock. And as part of it, that, because they can't have, Fiserv, the connection, it would look like there was something going on if he kept the stock. So he had to get rid of it. And there's a special statute that allows him to do that without taking a tax hit. And that means that basically he got to sell it and transition the funds when they were super high, which made him super wealthy. Social Security Commissioner Frank Bisignano came under renewed criticism this week for his work in the private sector as the stock price of his former company Fiserv tanked upon the rescission of long-term growth projections that executives say were too optimistic. Now, to be fair, Frank Bisignano wasn't the only one to draw up the projections of how much that company was likely to make in the future. And to be fair, at the end of the day, this is not uncommon for a company to say, hey, we're going to do this well. And some new CEO comes in and has to reevaluate things. And they go, whoa, hold your horses. It's not likely to do that well. Real quick, Interior Family True Crime. Thank you for the 5 Social Security gift memberships. We got Janet Petit, Diana Hazelton, Ahart, Light of the Moon, and also Life is Too Short. Excellent. And Shelly, thank you for joining the appreciation as well. Let's get right into it. Let's go through this a little bit. So you know which Fiserv is. They do a lot of the banking transactions that you use with your phone, a lot of Clover stuff. So basically, he was the CEO of that company. Okay. Shares in Fiserv, a financial technology company that processes credit and debit card payments on behalf of businesses and financial institutions, fell more than 40%, or $30 billion in market value on Wednesday after CEO Mike Lyons, that's the new CEO that replaced Frank Bisignano, withdrew earnings forecasts originally issued by his predecessor, Frank Bisignano, who was our new Social Security Commissioner. The stock price fell another 7.1% Thursday. So they lost tens of billions of dollars as a result of this new forecast and projection. According to the trade publication Payments Dive, Lyons said that Bisignano's earnings targets would have been objectively difficult to achieve, even with the right investment and strong execution. So just to be clear, the CEO that's now in is throwing the old CEO under the bus, saying that it's just the likely achievement of Fiserv would not have achieved that much income. They didn't have enough customers. They didn't grow enough new customers. It just was objectively difficult to achieve that. But instead, Fiserv had in recent years deferred needed investments and cut costs in pursuit of shoring up short-term profit margins. So in other words, Fiserv is saying, hey, Frank Bisignano kind of cut too much in costs in pursuit of basically getting the proper investments rolled up to make sure it was good for the longer game. So, it's a bit of a hit piece against Frank Bisignano. Keep that in mind ahead of time. Fiserv's falling stock price drew renewed scrutiny on Bisignano, who had recently been named Chief Executive Officer of the Internal Revenue Service, in addition to his duties at SSA, and as part of his transition to government work, had to offload hundreds of millions in shares in the financial company. Between May and July, Bisignano sold roughly $530 million in Fiserv shares. Bloomberg reported if held until today, those shares would be worth, instead of $530 million, just $229 million. making for $300 million in avoided losses. So just to kind of like catch you guys up on what they think is going on, they think Frank Bisignano basically, pushed the projections way too far beyond their actual capacity to achieve those earnings with Fiserv, which made the stock price soar and stay high. And as this isn't really soar, but it stayed high. And as a result of that, they're saying, hey, Frank might have, the new commissioner of the SSA committed some, I wouldn't say fraud, but like some influence to go ahead and basically try and manipulate a stock price so that he could, go and sell his stock and make a good, tidy profit, if you will. Okay. On top of that, when a government official divests from their private sector assets, they receive a certificate of divestiture, which allows them to offset some of the capital gains tax burden and reinvest those proceeds into government securities and other diversified investments. So what he was required to do before joining the SSA, he had to sell off a lot of that stock and invest it into other stuff that would not, just to be clear, be like, a problem of potential bias between the place he used to work and the place he's now going to work at the government. And, basically when he sells that stuff down the line, he'll have to pay taxes then if he ever does. Otherwise, it will remain as that giant amount of money that's been invested into new things. And then he can borrow money against the money he has in government securities and other diversified investments. So in other words, he can just keep borrowing money against the money he has. It's something that Elon Musk does. All rich people do it. They borrow money from banks against the stock that they have. And bottom line is that's how they get to go ahead and not get taxed on the money that they have in securities and investments and things like that. Princess Diana, thank you for the $2 donation. That's excellent. Howdy, Walter. Did you have a good weekend? No, the weekend was miserable, filled with work that was not doing great for outside work. Inside work went well, like computer work was fine, but outside work did not go well. Did not go well at all. All right, next thing, the withdrawal of Bisignano's Fiserv earnings outlook could also seemingly lend credence to a lawsuit filed by investors in the company, which called Bisignano and other executives misled stockholders about the growth of its point-of-sale system, Clover, using forced migration of existing customers to mask a lack of new business. So now there's a lawsuit against basically Frank Bisignano and some of the other executives that makes Frank Bisignano look like, a little bit of a schlup, for basically projecting that there would be a lot of money and a lot of new clients. But in reality, the new clients were migrating clients from one thing to another. We'll see. I'll update you as it comes down. I'll update you. In a statement Thursday, Nancy Altman, president of the progressive advocacy group Social Security Works, remember, very, very left-leaning, so it's going to be biased what she says, called for Bisignano's resignation, of course, an investigation into his departure and divestiture from Fiserv, drawing parallels between the allegations of mismanagement at Fiserv and SSA's deceptive customer service statistics. Now, look, I don't know if you guys have tried the new SSA 800 phone line. It sucks. It's horrible. It's just not good. And the bottom line is, like, they got rid of 7,000 something staff, fired, retired. Now they're getting rid of the 6,000 with the current shutdown. It's a spicy, spicy sandwich. Quote, when Bisignano joined the Trump administration, he sold all of his Fiserv stock, getting a big tax break in the process. He gets a tax break right now, but if he sells it in the future, he'll get hit with those taxes. But he never really needs to, because he can borrow money against his investments. Quote, that sale saved him $300 million in stock value. Did Bisignano know that Fiserv stock was about to tank and ask his friend Donald Trump for a life raft? How can we trust any claims Bisignano makes about Social Security, such as his insistence that phone service is improving even as media reports show otherwise? I hate the new phone system. I do not like it one bit. I do not like it one bit. I almost, like, I had one of those moments where I was like trying to get through and I was like squeezing my phone. I was like, no. Trying to get the local field office on the phone. Trying to get the DDS reps on the phone now is like pulling teeth. Fiserv's faltering stock price is not the only source of intrigue related to the SSA and day-to-day IRS leaders. Last month, Fifth Third Bank announced it was partnering with Fiserv to administer Direct Express, the federal government's debit card program used primarily to pay government beneficiaries who lack a traditional bank account. It's what they use for like SSI, Direct Express card, little green card, although it might not be green in the future because now Fifth Third Bank, they're getting on board. Yeah, it used to be mostly through just California Bank, but now Fifth Third Bank is doing it. That news came less than a year after the Treasury Department's Bureau of Fiscal Service initially awarded the financial agency agreement to Bank of New York Mellon. Bloomberg reported that BNY Mellon struggled to find a card issuer to partner on the project, and Fifth Third and Fiserv were the original third-place bidder for the deal, which is not subject to most contracting transparency rules after Flagstaff Bank, which passed on the renewed solicitation. Can we just be fair about why the banks were like, I'll pass? They passed or couldn't find other third-party card servicing groups to do it because none of the money that goes on these cards are used to then invest into like bank stuff. The money goes on it and then it gets spent, right? It's not a good investment situation for banks. It's just not. And then you get a lot of people calling the bank pissed off because they can't find their money on the card. And, you know, SSI people, they can be polite. They can also be hyper mean and scream at you because, to be fair, there is a chunk, not all of them, but there's a chunk of SSI recipients who have never had business interaction experience. So, you know, they've never had to like, you know, be nice on the calls in a professional way. And I know some people are like, that's not me. I'm not saying everybody, but there are generations of SSI recipients, even though SSI only came about in the 70s. You know, that's another video though. So now Senator Ron Wyden, Democrat Oregon, Representative John Larson, Democrat Connecticut, are investigating what Bisignano knew about the possible deal during his confirmation process, or whether it influenced the decision to cease offering paper checks to Social Security beneficiaries, which affected, yeah, that's a good point, because they got rid of the paper checks. That's a good point. And now everybody's potentially Direct Express. Like they got rid of one of the main options. Although to be fair, when they got rid of it, it's going to cut down on a lot of fraud that was done against those paper checks. So I got to be honest, that could go either way. Social Security, which effectively created a bevy of new Direct Express users, according to the Baltimore Sun, in fiscal 2024, Comerica Bank, who administered the program for the 2000s until earlier this year, that was the bank in California, was paid $920,564 to administer Direct Express. I got to be honest, I don't think that'd be enough to get all the employees you'd need to properly administer it nowadays. But, you know, I don't know if Comerica fought to keep it, but I doubt that they did. I doubt it. The Social Security Administration did not respond to requests for comment on Fiserv's recent stock performance, Bisignano's divestiture, his knowledge of Fiserv's underperformance, or the re-awarding of the Direct Express contract. In a statement to The Sun, the agency said that the commissioner complied with all obligations, SSA is backing him, under the government ethics agreement. All right. Here's my take on this thing, okay? Just so you understand where I'm coming from with it. Frank Bisignano obviously has ties with the right people. He's a super CEO and a wealthy man, okay? He also was an innovator in phone service with banking, which, to be fair, like, you know, that was a huge thing. And he was highly successful. So I guess the way I would put this at the end of the day is it looks like the timing is highly suspicious as to how all this stuff rolled out. But to be fair, like executives, you know, and then you add on top of that, Frank Bisignano, when he got the call from Trump, he was like, yeah, I didn't even know what the SSA was or how it worked or blah, blah, blah. And then you could say, but that was Trump saving his friend. But to be fair, he could have worked for any agency. He could have worked for the IRS, the US Treasury. He could have worked for any of these different groups and still been able to divest his stock. You know, why President Trump gave him the Social Security Administration? Well, in my opinion, it's because President Trump wanted the systems in place to be modernized based off of the banking systems that are used in the private equity market. So from my perspective, yeah, it looks pretty suspicious. Yeah, there is a lawsuit against him. These things tend to settle. Okay. These things tend to settle. So to be fair with this whole situation, I don't know what's going to happen, but what I usually see happening is that there's an agreement. Nobody gets to talk about shit. Nobody gets to say anything. It's basically you will have a settlement. We agree to this. We'll pay you this much, but nobody complains. There's usually a settlement. And at the end of the day, whatever was done wrong is not agreed to that they did something wrong. They're just giving money so that everybody is quiet. And that's how the law largely works. A lot of you don't realize that, but when something happens, a company does something and a wrong occurs, the company will usually give a settlement where they say, we didn't do anything wrong, but here's the money to make you shushy. And that's how a lot of law works. That's how a lot of it works. And a lot of you don't like that because a lot of you feel that the law should be about the right and the wrong and the weight of the evidence. This evidence is really good and heavy, but this evidence is extra XL heavy. You got to understand, law is more so about settlements than it is about trials, but settlements don't make good TV shows. That's just the reality of it. This will probably end up being a settlement. Hnot will have to give up some money. Other people have to give up some money. Is what it is. They'll move forward. I will update you on the status of this, but I know Trump might have been expecting something like this to happen. You never know. But at the end of the day, this is not good news for Trump to receive because it makes Frank Bisignano look like he was part of some backdoor dealings. When you have that person administering the Social Security Administration and now the CEO of the IRS, it's not a good look. It's not a good look. Now, if Trump knew about what was going on and he helped his friend go ahead and do this, then Trump won't be surprised and Trump will say, litigate it and see where it ends up. Because, Trump's a bossy boy. He's a very CEO from the 70s and 80s type of guy. So, just kind of remember that. All right. With that said, I will catch you all a little bit later. Please remember to like and subscribe. Please also remember, I don't do Medicare stuff. Chapter does. If you have questions about Medicare, give them a call. 339-226-6287. Again, 339-226-6287. Check in with them. They can do a tune-up on your Medicare. It takes like 15 minutes to call them and find out if you're on a great program. I don't know why you wouldn't call them because, frankly, at the end of the day, I need to personally be better about this, like calling insurance companies and being like, are you giving me the best deal that I could potentially have? And being like, what are you giving me? I need to do that more often myself. I mean, I've had the same law firm insurance for, I think, like 11 years, maybe 12 years. I don't know. I haven't really called around to I need to do more of that myself. But anyways, you want to do a checkup on your Medicare, give them a call. They'll do a tune-up. Attorney Walter Hnot, please remember, Mondays and Thursdays I go live to answer questions. That's tomorrow night. If you want to have a 30-minute or 1-hour private session with me, mini contract is below. I'll catch you a little bit later. Have a wonderful night. Please go to sleep, and we'll catch up then. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.